I've read a fair share of classics, but I've never like.
She thought that was funny.
I've never. Hello BookTube Nation, I'm Sam here again with A Baron of eBooks, and today I am here to finally do my tops of 2018. So the last one that I waited to film for you was my fiction reads, and that's because these were some of my favorite books of the year, and I had a really hard time narrowing them down. Two honorable mentions, and I'll show a picture here. One is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, and also is Agnes Grey by Brontë, and I really thoroughly loved both of those books. But I have four books here that I really wanted to talk to you about. The first one I'd like to mention, I decided to include in this part of my tops because even though it's children's literature, it's a classic, and I thought that it fit better here. And that is Black Beauty by Anna Sewell. This was a 5-star for me when I read it. I love the theme of the journey, and this book is that. It's basically told from the Black Beauty's point of view, the horse, and you start when the horse is very young and it's still with its mother, and then you follow the horse all the way through its life. To me, that's really interesting to think about the concept of a whole life and what does it mean and what does it encompass. You know, at my point in my life now, you start to kind of think of things like that. You start to, you know, lose people around you and things like that, and you start to kind of think about what will my last chapter look like. So it definitely had some deeper meaning in it for me. Also, interestingly enough, in this, you get to see humanity from an animal point of view, which is interesting, and you also get to see the highs and the lows, right? So you get to see someone that's filled with compassion and caring for its creatures, and then you also get to see people that are just absolutely nasty and people that you would never want to come across. So it looks at humanity in different points of view, and that's something that from other people that I've heard have enjoyed that really sticks out from this book. If you would like a study on humanity from an animal perspective, it goes into morality and treating those that you have control over, right? Because in this book, the humans have control over the horses, and you know, and another layer you might look at how someone in control of like a factory might treat its workers. Things from the Industrial Revolution I was kind of thinking of. It definitely had me thinking, and usually when I find a book that I think I will reread, because I don't reread very often, it definitely becomes a natural favorite of mine, and that's why it's here in this list. Next, this was one of the other books I read for Victober. The other one was Agnes Grey, which I thoroughly enjoyed. This is Ruth by Elizabeth Gaskell, and I really need to get to her other works because her writing and me, we get along really well. I've never found one author in the classics that I feel like I really connect to, that really speaks to me and who I am, and then I enjoy their writing style as well. And I think this is the only Gaskell I've read so far, but I think I may have found that in her. So I'm really excited to get to some of her other works. I have quite a few of them. I have North and South, Wives and Daughters. There's another one I picked up. But anyway, I really want to try Wives and Daughters, but it's huge. But maybe I'll just go ahead and do it because I think that I will really love it. So, but anyway, this book is taken from kind of a fallen woman's perspective, and oh, there's a new video on that I'll link down below. I recently watched Katie over at Books and Things did a whole Victorian, the 5 books of Victorians in this subject kind of thing. But anyway, it was really good. I'll link it down below if you want to check her out. I'm sure you're already subscribed to her. She's wonderful. One of the hosts of Victober, which is how I found this book. It's all about her life and how her decision to you know, be with a man before wedlock, how that affects everything else in her life. And it literally goes all the way through again to kind of her final chapter, and I found this really beautiful in a way. It talks a lot about the church and about English, a little bit about English church politics, which as an American, I don't know too much about, but I do find it really intriguing. And I'm Catholic myself, so it was interesting to kind of read from this point of view. But Ruth is really hard on herself, and that's something that I've struggled with in my own personal life. But her almost to the extreme. She does these things and she's so hard on herself, but at the same time she's such a beautiful person, and she really does her best to earn her keep and to do well by those that have given her a second chance. So this book is so full of hope and love, and it shows you know, the goodness of humanity. It also touches upon the double standard, especially back then, of how men and women were expected to act. You know, nowadays, there's definitely still a long way to go, but as women, we have a lot more freedoms and a lot more ability to choose our own paths in life and not to be so judged for them as women were back then. And I found it really interesting between that and the church politics and Ruth as a character herself. I really enjoyed her character, and I loved some of the side characters in this book. They're really fleshed out, and they were definitely memorable. Next is Fredrik Backman's A Man Called Uwe. I know this book has been very popular, so I won't talk about it for too long, but I definitely had to include it in this video. I just loved this book. I think that it had me laughing, it had me near tears, it made me feel things, it kind of went through the whole emotional spectrum. And this book definitely looks at loneliness, but again is hopeful. It's all about this old man who's kind of a curmudgeon, and he is not wanting to be befriended by anyone. He's not wanting to really know anybody. He just wants to do his own thing. And I don't want to get into any spoilers, but if you like books that talk about the important things and they're told using the daily things, everyday things, I think that's definitely a book you should check out. So it really packs a punch, but it talks about day-to-day actions, like he goes out in his garage and he goes to the store, and it's just a really beautiful way to tell a powerful story. I definitely enjoyed this, and I hope to pick up some more from this author. The final book I want to talk about today is Miss Palfrey at the Claremont by Elizabeth Taylor. Now, funnily enough, this was the very first book I read of last year, and it was my absolute favorite book of all year. I really started out with a bang last year. This book is about an elderly woman, and she's lost her husband, and so she goes to live at this hotel. It talks about other people, her peers that also live at the hotel in similar situations, and it talks about kind of her day-to-day goings about, and then one day she meets a young man. It's all about their interactions with each other and how even meeting one individual person can kind of change your everyday life. I personally have had some elderly friends, and I really enjoy spending time with them. I've always found that listening to someone who has lived, you know, decades before I was even born, I always find that I can appreciate their stories and their wisdom, and this book touches on that, and the beauty of having a relationship with someone who is much older than you, as far as a friendship and what that can bring about and how it can change somebody's life. This book is very quiet, but it's very powerful as well, and I thought it was really well written. I absolutely think I may have found a new favorite author, and I hope to check out some more of her works in the coming years. So that's all I have for you today. If you're new to my channel, thanks so much for being here, and if you're a return subscriber, thank you, thank you. Please go ahead and click the subscribe button down below. It really means a lot to me. And if you'd like to follow me on Twitter or friend me on Goodreads, I'll leave that information below. But thank you so much for being here with me today. Farewell for now. Bye-bye. So if